In this video, we're going to talk about how to enable course grading schemes. Now, for most teachers, the default grade scale works perfect. Even if you're using grading for equity practices, you simply apply a grade floor on all assignments, and this same scale still works. So for most teachers, they're just going to use the traditional grade scale, the default grade scheme. But there are a couple reasons why you might want to enable grade schemes. One is because you want to change the grade scheme for the entire course, or perhaps you want to create alternate grade schemes for different types of assignments. So before you do that, I do recommend that teachers consult the instructor's guide on Canvas, and there's a section on how to use grading schemes in a course, and then there's a section on how to add a grading scheme to an assignment. And these links will be provided in the description of the video. But this is definitely a level of complexity that requires a little more forethought and just a little more research. In this video, I'm pretty much just going to cover how to enable a grading scheme, how to change it for the course, and then how to change it perhaps on specific assignments. But I do recommend that teachers consult the instructor guide on Canvas and just dive a little bit deeper and understand how Canvas calculates grades before you change anything. This is one of those features that I think can be quite exciting, but it also requires a lot more from us as teachers in terms of what we understand about it. For my personal preference, and I'm a teacher that has explored the grading for equity practices, I like to keep things pretty simple. I use one grading scheme. If I want to have different ways to assess students' works, I actually use rubrics. But enabling a course grading schemes is an option, and in this video I want to show you how to do that. So to do this, you want to be in a course, and then you want to scroll over to the left side navigation, and you want to click on Settings. In the course details, you want to scroll down until you find Grading Scheme, and you want to click Enable Course Grading Scheme. Now right now I just want to enable it, so I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to update the course details. Anytime I make changes in the course details, I need to scroll to the very bottom and click Update Course Details, or nothing will be saved. But I've already updated it, and if I scroll back to the middle to Grading Scheme, I can view the grading scheme. Now the default grade scale is the one that most teachers are familiar with from their use of School Loop, and even at James Lick High School, we've been using Canvas for a while. We've been using this default grade scale. But if you want to change it for the entire course, you just click on Select Another Grade Scheme, and you adopt either one of the pre-made grade schemes, and these are made from the district, or you're going to create your own. To just add a different grade scheme, you would just click on the grade scheme, and then you would have to, sometimes if, for example, with this one, there's not much real estate being used up here, you'll find this button very easily. But if you're using a grade scheme that has a lot more detail, you're going to have to scroll down and find this Use This Grading Standard. Now what I've done is I've changed the grading scheme for the entire course. If I wanted to change it just on specific assignments, I wouldn't change anything here, but I would click on Manage Grading Schemes so that I could create alternate grade schemes. So let's talk about how do you create a grade scheme. Maybe you want to create a grade scheme for the entire course, or maybe you want to create alternate grade schemes for certain assignments. So you click on Manage Grade Schemes, and your choices will be either to use a grade scheme that the district has created, and you'll see the account, Eastside Union High School District, or one that you created, and I can add a new grading scheme here. Now you can't edit or delete the district-made grading schemes. They're just options for you to use. But you can edit your own. So if I created this one, I can edit it, cancel, and I can also delete this one if I want to. So you can only edit and delete the grading schemes that you create. Let's talk about how we add a grade scheme. So we'll click on Add Grading Scheme, and what it's going to do is it's just going to automatically populate it with the default grade scheme, which then you can modify. And what I recommend, now what I'm going to do here is this is not going to be a deep dive. This can get a little complicated where you're setting up, okay, if they get so much, a percentage of so many points, what gets triggered over here. This can be a little more complicated. Very often I recommend that you actually write it out on a piece of paper beforehand and then work with it here. But some things that you should know and that I can talk about in this video are, one, give it a descriptive title. That way, when you're selecting different grade schemes, like on particular assignments, you know what this is all about. So let's say you have some what you call pillars that are set up in your grade in your classroom. I'm just going to call this pillar grading. I'm going to call it number 2 because I already think I created one, not pillar, pillar grading scheme. So let's say I give students on certain skills, I'm going to grade them advanced, proficient, developing, emerging. So I only need these 4 categories. So I can delete these other ones. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete, 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 delete. It's kind of intensive, but I do that. The thing you need to know is this is just a name. Canvas doesn't calculate the name. Even if there's points here or if there's letter grades here, Canvas is not calculating this. What Canvas does is it takes the points earned and divides it by points possible. And then that percentage triggers this column over here. So if a student gets between 90 and 94% of the points, then they're going to score proficient on this scheme. If they get 77 through 88%, they're going to get a 3.5 on this scale, and so forth. So this is not a calculation, this is just an appearance. Now, the thing you should know about the range, though, is that it's going to top out at 100%, and it has to go down to 0. Now, let's say for a particular type of work, there really only are 4 categories. The students are working, and the lowest grade they can get is emerging. Well, then you might want to create, so we'll just click the plus sign, you might want to create a category, just title it X, and this is a category that you're just not going to award. So this would be, say, 0, and let's say, there we go. So this category, which in this instance I'm not going to award it, is going to go from 0 to less than 60%, so that'd be 59 to 0. And the X just means I'm not going to award it. Or you could award it and just call it fail, or whatever it is, not pass, something that works for you. And then you'll want to redo these numbers. Now again, this part gets a little more complex, and I'm not going to cover it in this video. This would be kind of the deep dive that teachers would need to do on their own. But this is how you would create an alternate grade scheme. Now, I definitely wouldn't use this one for the entire course. So I've already selected the default grade scale, which is this standard scale for the entire course, but now I have all of these options, including the default, for specific assignments. So let's talk about, well, how do I apply a different grading scheme to a specific assignment? So in my example, for the course, I'm just sticking with this traditional scale. And I'm using Grading for Equity Practices, so I'm using a grade floor, but this scale works for me for the entire course. But I've got these other grading schemes that I can use for specific assignments. So let me click on Assignments, and I'm going to choose an assignment. So I'm just going to choose this assignment, and then I'm going to go into Edit. Now, if you're creating assignment, you'll do this while you're creating it, but if it's an assignment that you've already created it, you're going to go in and you're going to edit it. And then I'm going to scroll down to display grade as. So you can display a grade as a percentage, as complete, incomplete, as points, or you can select letter grade, and that's going to enable you to view and change the grading scheme. So I'm going to do this for this specific assignment. Then I click on View Grading Scheme, and right now I'm using this standard the standard grading scheme. But let's say I want to use a different grading scheme, so I'll go select another scheme, and let's say I want to use my pillar grading number 2, and then I'll click on Use this grading standard, and I'll be done. And then I would scroll down, and I would save. And so what would end up happening here, okay, is if students get, let's say students get 39 points out of 40, that's going to trigger the advanced grade. So they're going to see advanced in the grade book. It's an actual calculation because the points are still there. The student doesn't see the points, but the points are underneath, if you will, that label of advanced. If they got, say, I don't know, 68%, and that was my emerging category, then that's what they would see. So I don't have to type in that. I can just give them points, and then Canvas will find, if I go back to the grading schemes, what Canvas is going to do for me is that it's going to make this appear. Now, again, this is most useful if you have a specific assignment and you want to grade it in a slightly different way, and you want to present that to students in a different way. You can opt, if you want, you can opt to have it not count towards the final grade, but it'll still show up in the gradebook and it'll show up in their grades, but it won't be calculated. And that's a little bit complex. Students will see a grade, they're going to want to fix that grade, and they're not going to understand perhaps that it doesn't count towards the final grade. So this is where it gets a little more complex. And so if you want to use different grading schemes, it's definitely there, and there could be useful ways to use it, but you have to very clearly understand it for yourself and also communicate that to students. So again, if you've watched this video and you're still confused, you're not sure about it, ultimately this is definitely one of those functions within Canvas that each teacher needs to explore for themselves and really understand it for themselves, and perhaps work with other teachers to talk about how different grading schemes can be applied. In this video, I simply wanted to show you that you can enable different course grading schemes. You can use grading schemes that were pre-made, or you can create your own. You can apply these grading schemes to the entire course, or you could apply them on specific assignments. Again, I don't want to influence anybody, but my personal preference is to keep things more simple. And so if there's different ways that I want to communicate things to my students, I'll do that in the class, or I'll use rubrics to communicate different skill levels. So again, not to discourage anybody from using grading schemes, but it does add a level of complexity. And again, I recommend that teachers consult the instructor guide, and there are sections on grading schemes and how to use them and how to employ them.